Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Daf Yomi Share, learning Kesubos Daf Nun, number 50. It's a big milestone to get 50 Dafim in Kesubos. We're almost halfway through. I'm sure you've enjoyed it just as much as I did. I have, and I don't know what time learning Masechtas Kesubos is for me. I'd say, I don't know, fifth or sixth time learning Masechtas Kesubos. Out of all these Masechtas that I learned in yeshivas over the years, I think Kesubos was the most popular. I learned it the most times being in. So, if you haven't been with me, stick with me now. I give you not only the best Daf Yomi share in the world in under a half an hour, I also give you an Ian share on the Daf, 8 to 10 minutes. Plus, this is all part of the greater Yeshiva YouTube, 40 shiurim a week. Mishnah Yomi, Shulchan Aruch Yomi, The Real Me, Hashkafa Sefer, and also an Ian Shir on all of the aforementioned. Let's get started. Daf Nun, the third line. Amar Rabbi La, Ba'usha Yiskino Mavazes Al Yivazes Yoser Michomish. Probably one of the Gemaras you've heard about, especially if you're a rich guy. We know there's something called Meiser Ksafim. It's debatable whether you have to give Meiser Ksafim. The source for giving Meiser Ksafim is from this Gemara. Simple explanation is that you give tzedakah. When you give tzedakah, you shouldn't give more than 1/5 of your money away. Tosfos explains when you first decide you want to keep halacha, you can, whatever you have in the bank account, you give away 1/5. Every year, right, the most you can give away is 1/5 of your profits from that year. So you shouldn't give more than 1/5. The Brayse says likewise. The Brayse gives a reason, because seemingly the way ArtScroll explains it is that if you give away more than 1/5, then you might have no money left, and you're gonna have to ask tzedakah yourself, which makes sense if you're a person who earns, let's say, $100,000 a year. But if you're a person that's worth $1 billion, you're Warren Buffett, and you give away half of your money, like Warren Buffett, I think, set up an enterprise to do. Trust me, you're not going to be so poor. You're not going to inspire Labrios. So it doesn't make sense really. The Gemara. There are exceptions written by the poskim for Talmud Torah, the Chafetz Chaim, so you give away half of your wealth. Because Sachar Zvulun partnership, we see that he did that. We see that Zvulun did that. Also, when you're about to die, you can give 1/3 or 1/2. Some poskim say. An Ian with Ben Sion, the Ian Shir on the Daf Yomi Shir. I will explain this a little better. I don't believe it's talking. I mean, it is talking about tzedakah. I'll explain a different reason. Shamit Starach Labrios. You're not gonna want to miss it. All right, let's go on. Ma'aseh be'echa. There was an incident with one person. She wanted to give more than 1/5. His friend Charlie Munger didn't allow him to do it. Didn't allow Warren Buffett to do it. Minor Rabbi Shaviv. No, it wasn't Charlie Munger. Rabbi Shaviv. I'm Rabbi Shaviv. Some say it was Charlie Munger wanted to give more than 1/5 of his wealth away. Below Inichu Chaveru Minor Rabbi Akiva. If you didn't know Rabbi Akiva, also known as Warren Buffett, I'm joking. Chas v'sholom. Say such a thing. Say such a thing. Rabbi Akiva could be Warren Buffett. Chas v'sholom. No, Rabbi Akiva is Rabbi Akiva. Warren Buffett is Warren Buffett. But a bit of information. I did purchase yesterday 2 shares of Berkshire Hathaway. I made a lot of money in the stock market, so I figured it's a great investment. Berkshire Hathaway was about $300,000 a share, so I have 2 shares now. So that would make me worth $600,000. Plus, I have 3 apartments, one in LA, one house in LA, an apartment here in Israel, and I have mansion in London also, west end of London. So, my net worth is over $5 million. Hopefully it'll keep on going up. I hope to be one of the richest people in the world soon, overtake Elon Musk. I hope my goal is to be the first trillionaire in the world. I'm saying it on camera now. I'm lying about this thing about owning Berkshire Hathaway. I do not have the money to buy any close to anywhere near even 1 share of Berkshire Hathaway, nor do I own any real estate. Even place I live, I do not own it. So my net worth is very little, but I still am saying this on camera. This with all sincerity. I hope to be the first trillionaire in the history of mankind. They say that even Rockefeller, maybe the richest guy in modern history, was only worth like $400 billion, factoring in inflation. So there's never been a trillionaire before. That's why I am on YouTube, because YouTube is going to pay me and make me the first trillionaire in the world. No. There's no way you're making $1 trillion off of YouTube. Maybe $1 million you can make, a couple million. But that's about it. You're going to have to find other ways to generate revenue. All right, so let's say go on the Gemara. I really would like to be a trillionaire, They say about money, too much is enough, Same thing with women. Women and money, too much is enough. So, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman Tamer Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, my crop. What's the pasuk that you can't give more than 1/5? V'chol asher titein li aser asreinu lach. Yaakov says to Hashem, right, whatever you give me, if you support me on my way when I go to Haran. Right, he was searching for a wife. Eventually found his soulmate Rachel, Leah, not his soulmate. Whatever you give me, I will give a tenth. Asreinu, double usher, another tenth back to you. So the Gemara asks, "Hello, dummy, sort of bashli, sort of kava." It's not exactly 20% because the first one is 10%, but then you're left with less principles. Out of the total, it's maybe 19%. So it's not 20%. How does the Gemara say you give up to 20%? Amrav Asrenu Labasraki Kama. Asrenu, the extra nun and vav at the end, is to tell me it's going on the principle originally, right? The second hafrasha, the second tithing is from a tenth. The second tithing should be like the first one, 1/10 of the original assets. Amrav Simi Barashi, Bishmuos Al Mismatos Faholchos, Simanech Tanim Kasu Bizbizu. The past three teachings of Rabbi Law. The first teaching he quoted two other Amoraim. The second one he quoted one of the Amoraim, and the third teaching he quoted himself. So therefore they go down in number of people transmitting this halacha. Ktanim Kasvu Vizu. The first halacha about Ktanim was in the name of two other people. Kasvu was in the name of one other person. Ubizvizu, this halacha Mavazviz, he said himself. Amar Rav Yisrael Bar Usha Hiskinu, another Takanim in Usha. She Adam is Gal in Beno at Shnemes Rishana. Now, we said yesterday that a person maybe has to feed his children 12 years old. This doesn't mean the same thing, obviously. It means that a person should, I don't know, it's talking about chinuch, I think it means when you're raising your children, if the child throws a fuss and tries to rebel on 12 years old, you stick with the kid, you give in to the kid. If you want to discipline a kid who's older than 12 years old and they have seichel and they have reason over they're going to rebel against you, you give it to him. Now, it doesn't mean some repartion say you're supposed to beat him. I don't think it means to beat him. I don't think that's like a chinuch to hate your child. It's not a good way. I don't believe that's the proper way to do it. I personally struggle with to mechanech my children. My oldest kid is 4 years old, and at this point, I'm threatening. The way to convince my kids to do what I want is to threaten them. You won't get ice cream, or you'll have to get a punishment by staying in the room for a minute. And the threats, they were working in the beginning. But then my daughter, my 4-year-old daughter, she's giving it back to me. She said to me the other day, she says, if you don't give me Oreos, she likes Oreos. I don't always give her my Oreos. If you don't give me Oreos, I'm going to sleep. I'm taking a nap in the middle of the day, which she knows is very bad for me and my wife, because that means she'll be up the whole night till 11 o'clock, and I won't get a rest when she goes to sleep normally at 7 o'clock. So she threatened me back. My 4-year-old daughter, she threatened me back. And I'm like, oh man, now I'm in trouble, I thought I had it, threatening my kids. That was the way to do it, There's other parents that bribe their kids, if you're quiet, if you go to sleep now, I'm going to give you a chocolate in the morning. That is the worst, I think, because then you're making the kid the king. If you're threatening, you're showing who's boss. But, eventually the threat, one time I actually hit my daughter on her hand. I was going crazy. I couldn't take it anymore. My wife wasn't so happy about that, hitting the kid. I generally do not rely on hitting the child. I hit her very lightly on her hand, but, she went crazy, of course. But the Gemara talks about discipline over here. What do you do with your kid? How do you discipline them? So let's see what the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, until 12 years old, you give in to them. Whatever they don't have rationality. Their rationality doesn't kick in. They're not able to think rationally. From then on in, I don't know exactly what this means. You have to go down into their living. I don't know, maybe take away money from them, sanctions. I don't know. Aini, is this true? Amalei Rav Shmuel Bar Shela, Basra Bar Shis Lo Tekabel. Under the age of 6, don't take their shit, don't take their crap. Just give it to them, force them to do what they want to do. Bar Shis Kabil, when they're 6 years old, right? If you just don't give them anything, they're just gonna, throw a bigger tantrum. Kabil, the Safi like a Tura, and you feed them like an ox. So the Gemara thinks the Mepharshim thinks this means you're talking about filling them up on Torah. I would say Bar Shis Kabel Safi like Torah means you give them too much, right? You accept whatever their protest. Say, you want it? You want those Oreos? Now take 20 Oreos and eat 20 Oreos, right? Fill up like an ox. So the Gemara has a question. Before we said until 12 years old you're supposed to accept them. Here until 6. In Safi Leketura Miyu Einu Yardim Alachayev Ad La'achar Shnei Esrei Shana. The Gemara said before, after 12, right? You're Yardim Alachayev, you treat them rough, right? Here we're saying already at 6 you treat them rough. So the Gemara says yes. At the age of 6, the way of doing China for Safi Leketura. Yeah, you want it? Take 100 of them, right? And then Yardim Alachayev, when they're rebelling, when they're teenagers and they're rebelling against you, then I don't know exactly the way of doing this, but I guess Yordim Olachayev, meaning you gotta sanction them financially. They're getting an allowance, you take away the allowance. They're entitled to good food, you take away their good food. That's what I think. Alternatively, a way of reconciling the two different statements depends on teaching them Mikra and Mishnah. The Amar Abai, Amar Li'ein, Bar Shis L'Mikra, Bar Eser L'Mishnah. At 6 years old, you teach them Mikra, right? The Torah Shebachta. Bar Eser L'Mishnah. At 10 years old, you start teaching Mishnah. Bar Kleisar L'Tanesa. At 13 years old, you start Tanesa. I mean, seemingly it means you're supposed to let them fast. I mean, I don't know if the Gemara has to tell you. I mean, at 13 years old, you're a Bar Mitzvah. Of course you have to fast. Me'es La'es. B'tinok is Bas Tresar. This is talking about a 13-year-old, meaning 12 years on one day, you do Me'es La'es. And a Tinokus, a girl, you do at 12 years old. Now, similarly, this means the halachas of fasting on Yom Kippur and Tisha, but I would say no, that it's talking about, right, you impose a tightness on them. Yordim Olachayev, meaning you're not getting dinner. Right? You can't starve your kids. You say, okay, you can have cereal, but you're not getting the good dinner that I'm making. The hors d'oeuvres that I'm making. You're not getting the hors d'oeuvres. You're eating cereal. You're eating Cheerios, not even Honey Nut Cheerios. Maybe that's the way of doing it. So that's when they get older, and when they're younger, so that's Mishnah and Mikra. I think the Gemara is just bringing this in for the sake of the end of this L'Tanesa. Amar Abai, Amar Li'eim, High Bar Shis de Tarka Le'akrava. A scorpion bites a 6-year-old. B'yoma de Mishlam Shis. The day he turns on 6th birthday, Lo Chai, he won't live. Maya Susei. Obviously, this can't be taken a little at face value. So I hope one day we'll all try to figure out what this means. Maya Susei, how do you heal him from dying? Marasa de Daya, Chivrisa b'Shichra. You take the bile of a vulture, a white vulture, and beer, Nashbia Menashke. You smear the bile on him, and you give him the beer mixed with the bile to drink. Hai Bar Shasta, the Tarkle Zibura, a 6-year-old that was bitten by a wasp, right? Biyoma de Mishlam Shasta, the 6-year-old birthday, Lochaye, he won't live. Mayasuse, how do you heal him? At Svasa de Dikla, you take some of the liquid in a palm tree, the trunk of a palm tree, the Maya with water, Neshvi and Ashkia, you rub it on him and you give him to water to drink. Amar Abdina Kal Machas is Beno, Palchim Ben Shesh, Rat Achra Be'ina Magdia. Someone who enters his child into this situation, right, where you're Safi like Ketura, we said, basically that, you give him more than he needs, right, you'll run after him, you won't reach him. You get the Amri Chabera Rat Achra Be'ina Magdia also. seems to be ineffective the first day. And the second Seder, same in say it's very effective, that you'll be mechanech him so well that he'll be ahead of all his friends. Tervayu Isnu, both are true. Chalish v'gamir. If he's a weak kid, so he'll be, well, meaning he'll be weak. If you treat him like this, he'll be weak. You fatten him up with all those Oreos, v'gamir, but he'll be a studious person. Anybody will listen to you. Had the chachish, had the bari. If he's a weak kid, right? So then you can't. It's not. It's going to be effective. That it's not going to be effective. You'll slow him down. The bari, if he's a strong kid, so then you could safile ketura. You could fill him up on Oreos, and he'll be so strong that his friends won't race to him. It'll be so effective. She sold, right? We talked about a woman brings into her marriage, she brings in specific properties. She has property that she owns, the karka, the land, and the fruits the Baal gets to eat. And there's Nixon on Barzal, it gives her her clothes or her linens that she brings in. So he gets to accept them at the value. If they appreciate for him. If they depreciate, he has to pay her back the original Son Barzal, what it was worth when they got married. So by Nixon Meluk, where she owns the karka, he eats the payroll. So it's not just talking about land, it's talking about any, let's say, stocks or something like dividends or things like that. So the dividends he would get, however, the Karen, the basic stock, she gets to keep. She sold those stocks, right? During her marriage, she was unhappy with her husband. They had a nasty fight. She stole their whole portfolio. Omesa, and then she dies. Now, when she dies, the husband inherits her. He inherits that money that he was owed to her, the monomasayim, the dosefes, the dowry, the nichsim melug, the nichsim bars. He gets all these things. Habal mosim al kuchas. However, she sold it previous to her death. So the halach is, even though mido raisa, she doesn't get to collect. The reason being because it's a machlokas in Yavamos, in Ishlakish Rabbi Yochanan, kinyan a-peiros, the kinyan a-gufdam. If you own the peiros of a land, does that mean you own the entire land? Rabbi Yochanan says yes. Rish Lakish says no, you don't own the entire land. So mido raisa, we paskin like Rish Lakish. It's one of the three places we paskin like Rish Lakish. You don't own the land. So when she sold it, right, it's considered metaltale the yasmi lo mishabli lo balko. You can't collect that land because it doesn't belong to you. Midrabanan, they're masakin that by when it comes to her nichsei melug, we truly hold like Rabbi Yochanan. Kinyan Peres, the Ikka Kinyan Dami, he owned the karka. He's not a Yoresh, he's a Lokeah. It's like when he married her, he was entitled to the fruits, but also to a Kinyan or a Sklis in the land. Therefore, when she sold it, he had a lien on it, and therefore, after she dies, he can collect. That was only taken under Rabbana, because they wanted men to stay married to their wives. He was standing in front of a big crowd of Usha. Who's the one who taught this teaching? He says, Yosef Zimnin. When he heard this, he learned it. He asked to repeat it 40 times. He remembered it so well. The Yosef Chanina, it was like it was in his pocket. Ashrei Shomri Mishpat Ostastaka B'choleis. Pasuk in Mishlei says, someone who does staka all the time. Is it possible to give staka all the time, 24/7? Darsha Rabbeinu should be Abner. What do they explain? Amri LeRabbezer is that Zan Bar of Bnosok Jenidanim. It's someone who feeds his children when they're young, meaning before the age of Bar Mitzvah. Rishmol Bar Nachmani Amar Zeh Hamagad Al Yasim Yisomim Beisal Beisal. Someone who raises orphans, right? Children, their parents die. He raises them in his house. Matzian, he marries them up. Hon Osher Beisal. What is this pasuk referring to? Right? Stucco remains forever. He learns Torah. Now as he learns the Torah, he actually teaches it, like I'm doing on YouTube. He actually writes Sefer Torah and the Nevi'im Ksuvim, right? The fancy ones, the ones that are written by a sofer. He lends them out to another shul. What is this third pasuk referring to? Amar ben Levi came and Shabbanim Levanecha. Once you have grandchildren, because if your children have children, then we know chalitza and a yibum. There's only yibum and chalitza when your children don't have children, and therefore yibum and chalitza can break apart a family. Though chalitza, it's embarrassing. If yibum can be against the woman's will. If you have your children have children, so then when your children die, the inheritors will be their children. If the children don't have children, so the inheritors are other people besides their children. And as most people know, Yerusha can cause a lot of machlokas among a family. Is that Midrash Darish was Darish Chachamim that he compares that the sons after the father's death to the daughters after the father's death. So the Gemara is going to explain this. Just like another facet of this halacha, just like sons when they have a Yerusha, they only inherit the land. So too the daughters only get fed through whatever the real estate was worth, right? If they steal the real estate, they only get fed through that money, not from the metaltalin, from the things that are not real estate, things that are, movable objects, a sofa or things like that, or TV, baseball card collection doesn't count. You don't get fed from that. When they heard about it, everyone got angry. The Shavik Ara, who the Yarsile Bani, the Lo Shavik Ara Yarsile Bani. Of course, his sons inherit even his movable, his baseball card collection. They inherit also. I'm later of Yosef. V'dim Maksu has been in Dikran Kalmar. No, we weren't talking about Yerusha, that only Yerush his property. We're talking about the Kesubos being different. This is one of the Tanai Ksuba. We'll learn about more. There's different stipulations in a Ksuba, even if you don't say them explicitly. Chazal instituted their part of a Ksuba. And, for example, when a husband marries a woman, and then he goes and marries a second wife, his wife dies, marries a second wife, so, and he has children from two wives, so eventually his children inherit the ksuba, right? Two of his wives die. He has children from two wives. The ksuba that he inherited from the first wife only goes to the children from the first wife, not even though he has yorshim from the second wife, who also has yorshim. They only go for that wife to come. And about that we said that ksuba different only applies to the karka, but movable objects, the sons from both marriages inherit jointly. Amar le mar the gava rabba havayada my kamina. Said this person is great because he knew what I was talking about. Amar b'chei bar Yosef Rab zan michiti da'aliyah. Rav gave psak halacha. He gave nourishment. We'll see what this means in a second. From wheat of the aliyah, I mean the choicest, or from actual attic. Parnasa havya. What did Rav give? He gave parnasa. Parnasa is a dowry. He gave a parnasa, meaning girls that their father died and didn't get married off. So when they got married, he gave them a dowry that their father probably would have given them. My aliyah mi'aliyah da'av, from the best parts of the av, from what we can estimate the father would have given as a dowry. The Shmuel, the Amar Shmuel, the parnasa shaman ba'av. When it comes to dowry, we evaluate the status of the father. Was he a generous person? How much did he give to his previous children? Al Dilma mizoni mamash. What did Rav give? He gave actual food. Hava. He gave food to the daughters. My aliyah midvaram tovim shnamar ba'aliyah. And the great thing that was said in aliyah, in the attic. Amar Yisrael bar Yosef ba'aliyah his kinu shubanos nizonos min hamataltlin. They're masakin that the daughters should be fed even from the metaltlin, and not just, like we said before, that even though when it comes to the sons being yoresh, they're only yoresh, the ksus being different from the karka, from the real estate, they get fed even from the metaltlin. Tashma biyade b'nai akva de Rabbi Chia bar Abba, have metaltlin the yasme. They were metaltlin the yasme. Asal going to Shmuel. They came around to Shmuel. Amalei zun zil zun. He said, go feed them. My love, the mizoni. Didn't mean to give them nourishment, to give them food. Bar Yosef, severely, like the second explanation. Lo, Hasan Parnasahav. I know really it was the first explanation. The Shmuel Tameh, Shmuel, according to his own reasoning, Damar Shmuel Parnas Sham Ba'av. When it comes to a dowry, you evaluate what type of father he was. Hava Uvda ben Aharda. There was an incident like this in Aharda. V'don Daini den Aharda v'Mudisa. V'don Daini den v'Mudisa v'Agbi Rav Chana bar Bizna. There was an incident like this, and the judges. Don't Daini in Harda B'Humdisa Agmi Rav Chana bar Bizna. Rav Chana bar Bizna was one of the Dayanim, was able to take out, like the second suggestion, right? That they gave dowry to his daughters when they were getting married, considering what the father usually gave. Amalu Rav Nachman Zilu Ahadjule. Rav Nachman heard about this. He said, you have to return it. I'm going to take away their mansions. I'm going to take away even the karkos that the sons inherit. I'm going to take it away because you did the wrong din. You shouldn't give it to them. Rabbi Ami Riasni Savra Lamezan and Metaltle. They thought they should give Mizonos from Metaltle. Amalhu to the daughters. Amlahu Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi Milster Rabbi Yochanan Shlakish LaAvda Ba'uvda. Shlakish Rabbi Yochanan couldn't decide the matter. Asan Avdan Be'uvda. You're giving up sak halacha. Those are several amazing metaltlin. Those are thought. Yeah, you should feed the daughters from metaltlin. Amar l'fan Rabbi Shimon ben Eliakim Rabbi Yodeani B'cha she'en midas hadin ataosa. I know you're not acting according to the strict halacha. You're having mercy on them. If you're not doing an exact halacha, Talmidim will see, and they'll say, no, that's the halacha. The halacha is you give mazonos from the metaltlin, and that's not the real halacha. Ahu the asik made Rabbi Yosef. He came from Rabbi Yosef. He said, give the daughters, presumably for their mazonos, from the dates on the mats. You know, the mat. He put mats in front of the date trees in order to collect the dates that fell. Even if he's a loner, right? A person who lends out money, right? And a creditor, and he's coming to collect money from the debtor. You can't give him money from that. There's a concept of a lien, but lien only applies on real estate, on karkos, on metaltlin. Metaltlin the yasmi lo mishtabli l'balchov, right? If someone owns property and he dies, right? If he's alive, you can collect from his movable object. But if he dies, the Gemara has a dictum, metaltlin the yasmi lo mishtabli l'balchov. Whatever his children inherit, the metaltlin, only the karkos have a lien on them. If he dies, the real estate, the movable objects don't have a lien on them. So a Baal Chov wouldn't collect them. Like Kesubos, which is a weak Baal Chov, a weak debtor, they're going to collect. I wasn't talking about the actual fell, the ones that are about to fall. So they're attached to the trees, so they're part of the karkos. The Gemara continues, nun aleph, man aleph on the top. So, kola omi ligzos kegazes dam. Anything that's could be fit to be cut off right now, but it's ready to be harvested. It's like it's harvested. It's metaltlin. I'm talking about the ones that are hanging on the trees that still need to be on the tree for some more time, and therefore they're not omi legazos. They're not ripe right now to be cut down. So therefore they're part of the karkos, part of the tree which is attached to the ground, and therefore you can collect from the karkos, like we said. Even because it's been different, you can collect even to feed the daughters from the karkos. The only question is the metaltlin, movable objects. The psak seems to be on metaltlin. We don't allow you to collect. Just like the sons don't inherit it, so it's been different from the metaltlin. Hope you enjoyed today's shir. See you in Ian Ben Sia. We'll discuss more about this famous halacha. Someone who has mevaz, al yavaz is yosem menachomish. You can't give more than 20% of your money to tzedakah. Shema yitzarach labrios. Hey, Warren Buffett, why not? He gave halfway his money. Bill Gates, he wanted to give halfway his money. Why not? They're going to become poor? Shema yitzarach labrios. Doesn't make sense. See you in Ian with Ben Sia. We'll talk about this more coming up next.